really powerful as possible when we actually start to see every single person as worthy and start to practice detaching from the choices they make. Because, okay, this might get a little, I'm going to try and explain it very clearly, but it is a complex topic, so I might loop around on myself. I may repeat a bit, but I invite you to join me on this journey because it is such an important part of the work we need to do collectively right now. Now, a little bit about me. I was raised into a Catholic family, and in Catholicism, we talk a lot about things like the worthiness of every single life and how it's important to protect every single life. However, for a long time, I realized I was taking that a lot more literally than other Catholics that were around me, because there was a lot of attachment to how people lived their lives, and if people weren't living their lives in a certain way, a lot of folks seem to believe that they forfeited their worthiness if you were not living the life that they deemed acceptable. You are no longer worthy of the same dignity, of the same protection and love and forgiveness, and basically unconditional acceptance of your worthiness. It was forfeit. When I started to move away from Catholicism myself, I am non-practicing. I actually don't resonate much with Catholicism at all anymore for myself because of some of the hypocrisy I saw in the religion, in the practices, and in the people. And while, yes, I can recognize there are still some good things that they do, and, you know, maybe they're a little more truthful than some other religions out there. Not the point. I personally don't practice Catholicism because when I actively started learning from Indigenous elders when I entered post-secondary school, when I actually started to partake in more active reconciliation initiatives or learn from medicine people and teachers who were gracious enough to share their teachings and wisdoms with me, I saw an opportunity to actually live this immutable and inherent self-worth and inherent self-worth of every other person out there. Because in many of these ways of thinking and being and living, at least before colonization created such deep wounds among the Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, there was a willingness to detach from the choices people make because we were able to understand that their worth, one, doesn't actually change. If somebody makes a bad choice, if somebody makes a mistake, if somebody hurts someone else, they're still worthy. In the same way we're all worthy. A lot of people don't like that idea. They want to think that doing bad things makes people less worthy. But also, every single person has their own path to walk, and therefore we have to detach from the choices they're making, even when those choices create harm. And that's not to say we don't hold them accountable for the harm they created, because that accountability is part of repair that allows people to actually re-enter community spaces in a good way. And this is why it's so important for communities to be based in values, because if we're not based in values, we'll let people do anything without holding them accountable. is almost impossible. Because if we're not worthy, or if we don't believe we're worthy, why would we put ourselves through something so hard when we're not worthy of what comes after anyways? When we're not worthy of that repair, when we're not worthy of that healing that could happen between us. I think the ways that systems like colonization and capitalism and heteropatriarchy and white supremacy have really taught people that if they don't perform in certain ways, if they don't look certain ways, if they don't believe certain things, then they aren't worthy, has created a lot of damage. And it's disrupted people's agency and self-efficacy, their ability and willingness and desire in a lot of ways. And this is for people of privilege, but of privilege who, maybe had invisible hurdles to overcome, like neurodivergency, but also a lot of people who were born into very oppressed or marginalized identities, because we don't have control over how we're born, who we're born as. Not in our lives, at least. If we're born Black or Cree or white, we don't have control over that. And if we start to listen to what those oppressive systems tell us about our identities, and if we start to believe that it's true that we're not worthy, then why are we actually going to try to succeed in those systems? And that's why with vibrant systems especially, a lot of the work I do is centered around seeing, and by work I do, I mean on a very personal level too, is seeing the inherent and immutable worth in every single person I encountered. I don't have to like them. I don't have to agree with their politics or their beliefs. I don't have to deny if they're creating harms, but I still have to see them as worthy. Because if that person wants to actually embrace repair and accountability and change, if they want to become an ally and join the side that they were hurting for so long, that is only possible if I still believe, for me, I'm talking very personally here, I can only do that work with them and express that patience with them if I do truly believe that they are worthy of that energy. And it also requires discernment. I'm not saying we should bend over backwards or pour out emotional labor for people who aren't showing up in good faith. But for those who are willing to do that unlearning and that processing and grieving and practice of accountability with us, it's only possible if we actually believe that they're worthy of it too. And what's really helped me when I do the practices of self-worth and embodying that self-worth and embodying the challenges that come from choosing to heal my wounds, choosing to put myself in uncomfortable situations, choosing to learn about the ways I've unintentionally hurt others in my positions of privilege, choosing to show up in that humility, understanding that I am worthy, but I am also accountable. It's the exact same work. And for myself, this is why connecting to self first and building that awareness and presence and capacity first was such an important piece of my empowerment and my ability to do the work I do now in communities. And I think everybody has their own path to walk, of course. But if you're someone who wants to be an ally, who wants to partake in reconciliation and decolonization and community transformation in a good way, if you're called to do that work, but you're not sure if because you've been in privilege, because you've accidentally or unknowingly or even intentionally created harm by denying the lived realities of so many of our relatives on this planet, I want to invite you to consider starting with some of my resources, like Elements of Self, like my Value Identification and Exploration Workbook, because they don't shy away from the wounds we've created. They don't shy away from accountability. And in fact, it shifts towards radical responsibility for our impact and our choices and our responses to situations, and for educating ourselves and learning. I fully believe we're each responsible for that, because it doesn't matter how many amazing teachers we have. If we're not receptive, we're not going to learn. These resources teach you how to do that. They teach you how to connect to yourself in wholeness and to see your inherent worthiness in doing this work, so that you can actually open the door and be willing to see it in others too. Because if we don't believe it about ourselves, or if we believe that there's always something we can do that suddenly makes us unworthy, we're going to hold other people to those same standards, whether we think so or not. And in community work, in things like harm reduction, in responding to issues like poverty or addictions or racism even, we need to stop treating worthiness as a scarce resource and understand that we each are born with that worthiness already within us. That's the mental shift so many of us need to make, and I would love to help you do that. My name's Danielle. My mission is to help people deepen their connection to self, to others, and to the environment. If you resonate with this content, if something I said in this video pinged something inside of you, I want to invite you to subscribe for more of my videos, which include tools and strategies and meditations to support this work. And I want to invite you to check out my website, vibrantsystems.ca, for more of those paid resources that exist for you. And I want to invite you to believe it, to believe in your worth, to ask yourself, what if it were true that you are worthy no matter what you did, no matter what mistakes you've made? How would that change how you show up in your life? How would it change your ability to hope for a future where you can actually be the person you would be proud to be? Ask yourself that question. And let's make your story a vibrant one, because I believe it's possible. I wouldn't be making this content if I didn't. Thanks for listening, and